folks, I'm going to harvest my blackcurrants and I'm either going to be making wine or cider. You'll have seen the title of the film, so you'll already know. I'm not quite sure how many blackcurrants I've got, which is why I don't know whether I'm going to make wine or cider. If I've got less than 500 grams, I'll make cider, and if there's more than 500 grams, I'll make wine. Here's the bush. I've got it tied up because the blackcurrants are heavy and it all spreads out otherwise. I'm going to release that now. So you can see what a difference that makes. There's quite a few on. Time to get cutting and picking. So the easiest way to do this is to remove the branches, like so, and take them to the table, this way, and sit down and pick them in comfort. Okay, so now it's the repetitive and boring bit. I'm going to hear that sound many thousands of times over the next hour or so. But it's all part of the fun, isn't it? Right, I'll be back in a bit. Okay, that's the first branch empty. About another 60 of them to go. And that's one branch worth. Okay, I'm halfway there, or over halfway there. And that's the story so far. Okay, an hour later, this is the blackcurrant bush now. That's what's being cut off it. There's some cuttings to make some new blackcurrant bushes from. And here is a heavy panful of blackcurrants. That is way more than I expected, so I need to go and weigh this now. So I think it's fair to say that I've got a veritable bounty here, way more than what I expected. I'm going to weigh it in a second, but before I do, I'm going to tell you a little story about that blackcurrant bush. So about 20 years ago, the Ribena company were running a promotion whereby if you collected little tokens off the soft packets of Ribena and sent them in, they would send you a Ribena bush twig, something like this. So I did do. I had two young girls and we thought it'd be fun to grow a Ribena bush. So we grew a Ribena bush. And from that I thought, well, if it's that simple, just by doing a twig, why don't I take a cutting and grow another Ribena bush? And I did, and I grew another Ribena bush and another Ribena bush, blackcurrant bushes, in other words. And there's probably been about 20 or 30 blackcurrant bushes from that original bush. That one in my back garden's the best cropper. I've got about 6 cuttings here. I'm going to leave these in water for probably 3 or 4 days. Then I'm going to transplant them into compost in plant pots, keep them moist, and next year these will grow as Ribena bushes or blackcurrant bushes for themselves. I haven't got room in the garden, but I'll dot them around the local countryside and other people can benefit from them. So I've got my wok on the weighing scales. I've zeroed it to 0 grams. Now let's pour the blackcurrants in, see what a difference that makes. Watch them go everywhere. What a crop. Incredible. Right. You're not going to believe this. God. Well, I was thinking if I've got less than 500 grams, I'll make cider. If I've got more than 500 grams, I'll make wine. I didn't bank on getting nearly 3 kilograms. But that's what I've got. 2,904 grams, including bugs. So I need to have a serious think about this. What I'm thinking of is a gallon of blackcurrant cider, a gallon of blackcurrant wine, and some homemade Ribena Blackcurrant Cordial. How does that sound? Let's do all 3. So the next job is to get these back into the original pan. There they are. And I'm going to fill this pan with cold water, and I just want to rinse these now. Okay, I'm going to leave these to soak for a couple of hours and then I shall come back to them. Right, so a couple of hours later I'm going to attempt to take some of the bits of detritus off the top. This is just the filter from one of my fermenting vessels actually. It's from my Muntons wine fermenter. Alright, I'll do a little bit more of this and then I'm going to weigh out my blackcurrants into that pan, that wok, and I'm going to leave some in here. I'll be back. Right, I'm going to weigh out 500 grams of the blackcurrants for the cider. I'm now going to weigh out 1 kilogram for the blackcurrant wine. See how close I am. Oh! Go on, let's get it up to 1 kilo. Ah, that'll do. So that should mean I've got somewhere between 800 and 900 grams of blackcurrants left in here. I need to drain the water off and then I'll weigh them in that. Okay, that's those drained off. Let's have a look. Oh, my maths is all over the place. There's 1500 grams there. Right, need to rethink this. Right, I need to take 500 grams out of here now. There's a slight change of plan, I'm just going to say. So I had 1500 left, not 900, because I can't add up. I can add up actually. I just made a mistake. Right, that'll do. So having now separated all these out into the various pans, let me talk you through what I've got. I've got 500 grams of blackcurrants here. That's going into blackcurrant cider. I've got 500 grams of blackcurrants here. These are going to make some Ribena style cordial. I've got 1 kilo of blackcurrants here. This is going to make blackcurrant wine with red wine yeast. And I've got 1 kilo of blackcurrants here. This is going to make blackcurrant wine with white wine yeast. Right, I've got 400 ml of spring water in here, and this is going to go into the blackcurrants for the cordial. It should just about cover them over, thereabouts. Then the lid goes on the pan, and I'm going to put this on low. And I just want that to come to a steady simmer. Okay, for my blackcurrant cider, I'm adding 800 ml of spring water. Once again, turn the ring on and put it on low and pop a lid on top. Okay, that leaves me with nearly 4 litres of spring water in here, or maybe just over 4 litres of spring water in here. Either way, I'm going to divide this between the 2 pans for the wines. So I'm going to try and get the same amount in each one. Obviously won't get exactly the same, but thereabouts. That'll do. So as with these 2 pans, the heat now needs to go on for these 2 pans. And I want to turn that down low also. I don't want to nuke this, I want it to come to a nice gentle simmer so all the juices slowly release out of the blackcurrants. So I'll put the lid on my wok. And finally I'll put that lid, which doesn't quite fit, but it's fine, on that saucepan. And I'm now waiting for these to come to a boil and come to a simmer. So this is likely going to be an overnight process. Once it's come to a simmer, I need to extract the fibres from the liquids, then I need to boil with sugar, add other ingredients, etc. Let it cool down before I can add the yeast. So I think it's probably going to be tomorrow by the time I finish this, but I'll do what I can for tonight anyway. So the 2 smaller pans have been simmering away now for 10 minutes. I'm going to turn those off. And I'm just going to leave them now to cool down. I've still got quite a way to go with the bigger pans. I've got 3 out of 4 of the pans now turned off. This one is now turned off also because that one had started boiling. This one's going to take a little bit longer because it's on a smaller ring and there's quite a bit of water in there. I'm happy to wait. Patience is a virtue. Okay, it's late. I'm tired. I'm going to pick this up in the morning. Catch you then. Hey folks, it's the next day and it's a blooming warm one. Have a look at that. Flipping out, we're having a heat wave. It's one of those days where you want to be drinking cordial wine and cider and not making it, but hey ho, here we go. So I've got another pan and I've got a colander in top of the pan and I'm going to strain the blackcurrants now that I'm making the cordial from. It's simply a case of just pouring them in. and letting them drain through. And this is going to be something I'm going to be doing with each of them as it happens. So what I've got are some blackcurrants in the colander, and then I've got the juice beneath it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer from the colander into a sieve the blackcurrants. This is not a job to do wearing a white t-shirt, by the way. And now, using my rounded wooden spoon, I'm going to work the blackcurrants through the sieve. So I'm getting out all the larger bits and pieces which I don't want in there. It's just the same process as if you're making jam. So what you end up with is the liquid and some of the solid matter pushing through the sieve, but this is going to be further strained yet. So I'll keep going now. This is quite a repetitive and long process, so I'll come back to you when I've finished it. So this is what I've ended up with. This is the solid matter that's left from the blackcurrants. That will go to compost to feed my garden. What's underneath it is now quite a thick liquid. Okay, the next step in me making the cordial is for me to run this through a filter and funnel into the demijohn to remove any of the larger pieces that are in there. Now I must stress there aren't really any large pieces in there, but there are some bits which are a bit thicker than what you would want in a cordial. This is going to take quite a while incidentally, so I'm going to have to leave it and come back to it. Okay, I'll be back in a little while with this one. Let's move on to the cider. Okay, so I'm going to do the blackcurrants for the cider in pretty much the same way as what I've done for the Ribena cordial, but what I'm going to do is straight into the sieve this time. I'm not going to bother with the middleman of the colander. And again, just as before, I'm going to use the wooden spoon to work the liquid out and get the solid matter and the seeds left behind in the sieve. So again, this is quite a repetitive process, so I shall be back to you in a little while. So there's my cider liquid and solids, again for compost. So I'm going to transfer my blackcurrants for the cider into this pan. I'm now going to add into the blackcurrants a litre of apple juice, just to thin the liquid out a little bit. After all, this is going to be cider, and I'm making it now the turbo cider way with apple juice from concentrate. Check out the Facebook group Turbo Ciders for All. I'm then going to pop 2 tea bags in, and I'm going to turn the gas on, and I'm going to put it on low. I'm going to pop the lid on, and I'm going to let this come to a simmer. I want the tannins to release from the tea bag into the cider to give the cider a bit more of a bite. Note that I'm not adding any extra sugar to this. There's plenty of sugar in the blackcurrants. There's some sugar in the apple juice. I reckon that this is probably going to finish somewhere near 7% anyway without me adding any extra sugar into it. So while I'm waiting for the cider must to come to a simmer and the tannins released from the tea bag, I'll now get on to the first of my wines, and it's exactly the same process as before. Pouring that through the sieve, stirring it round with the spoon, getting the liquid out, extracting the solids, collecting the liquid in that wok. So you don't need to watch me do all that all over again. You've seen me do it twice now already. I'll get back to you when they're done. And there's the net results of that. And I'm absolutely knackered now. Anyway, just as a blackcurrant update, I was about to put this onto the garden for compost, and I have done most of it, but my wife asked me if she could have some to see if it would dye some clothing. So there's a little experiment as well going on now. Right, the next step is to weigh out and add 1 kilo of brewing sugar into each of the wines. I always buy this stuff in bulk, it's a lot cheaper. This is just dextrose monohydrate. I use brewing sugar, this sort of sugar, because it breaks down a lot easier. It doesn't stress the yeast as much, and I think it leaves a cleaner taste. Anyway, this is going to take a while. I need to put 1 kilo in each one of those pans. So this is the first 715 grams. Just let that pour in. And so on. I'll repeat the process and come back to you when I've got it all in there. That's it. That's all the brewing sugar in each of these 2 pans now. So there's 1 kilo of brewing sugar in there and 1 kilo of brewing sugar in there. And in each of these, I'm just going to give it a little stir just to move it around. Make sure it's not stuck to the bottom. The brewing sugar does dissolve fairly easily, but it does need a little bit of heat. So to that end, I'm going to put the lid on, I'm going to put the heat on, and I'm going to turn it down to low, and I'm going to do exactly the same for this pan as well. So I'm now waiting for these two to warm up and the brewing sugar to dissolve. Let's go back to the cider, or the cider must. So this is the apple and blackcurrant tea, and you can see it started to come to a simmer. So I'm going to remove the lid, and I'm just going to give these tea bags a little press, just to release as much flavour out of them as possible. Get those tannins out there. I probably didn't need to add them because the skin of the blackcurrants will have had tannin in, but it doesn't hurt. So I'm going to pop that lid back on, let it simmer for another 2 minutes, and then I'm going to turn the heat off. Okay, this has been simmering away now for a couple of minutes. I'm going to turn the heat right off. I'm now just going to leave this for 2 or 3 hours to cool down. So the current situation is as follows. Cider must is cooling. The wines, I'm waiting for the brewing sugar to dissolve, and the cordial is still very slowly dripping through the filter. Just a little wine update. This is about 15 minutes later. It hasn't got to a simmer yet, but the sugar has completely and utterly melted. And that's all I wanted to achieve with this. So what I'm going to do now is switch the heat off from this one. That one's going to take a bit longer because it's in a smaller ring. And again, I'm going to leave this one to cool down just like I am doing the cider. Right, I suspect this one is done. I'll just give it a little stir. Yeah, there's definitely no sugar left undissolved in that, so I can turn the heat off on this one as well now. So it's just a case of playing the waiting game, letting these cool down a little bit. I'm not in any hurry. To be honest, I'd rather not rush the process, because if you rush it, you make mistakes. So it is just playing the waiting game now. These to cool down and the cordial to finish dripping. Okay folks, I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave this for today. I've got places to go, things I need to do. So this is going to end up being a 3-day recipe. I'll catch you tomorrow for the conclusion, hopefully. See you then. Hey folks, it's day 3 in the Blackcurrant house. Let's get this done now. So I've got all sorts happening in the kitchen. There's stuff everywhere. I'll explain it through as I go along. First things first, I'm going to tackle the cider. So here's my pan of blackcurrant juice ready to be made into a cider. I'm going to pour it through this funnel into this demijohn. Hopefully not going everywhere. And when I say blackcurrant juice, this is actually the blackcurrant tea, remember? And that's all gone in very nicely. So from here on in, it's the turbo cider method of apple juice from concentrate that's going into this. And just while I'm letting the apple juice go in, have you subscribed to my YouTube page yet? If you haven't, please do. www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk takes you to my YouTube. Press the red subscribe button, hit the bell, make me smile. Thank you. Making a bit of a mess there. I don't know. Can't beat a good squeeze on a morning, can you? Hey, hey. And now I want to ensure a consistent mixture, so I'm just going to give this a good swish around before adding the final litre in there. So a quick change of funnels, because I'm going to add some of the dry powder stuff now. I'm going to begin by adding a teaspoonful or a heaped teaspoonful of pectolase. This should help break down any haziness. When you boil fruit, it usually leaves a hazy wine or cider afterwards. I'm hoping that this will help it clear. However, I'm probably wasting my time because it's so dark, you're not going to be able to tell if it's clear or not anyway. But I'm just going to do it. So a nice rounded teaspoonful of pectolase. Next, I'm going to add some yeast nutrient. Now again, I probably don't need to add this either because there's so much nutrient in there from the blackcurrants that I probably don't need to add this, but I'm going to add it anyway. Won't hurt. And this will just give the yeast a little bit of extra to feed on, make it a bit happier and less stressed. Noisy enough for you? And now I'm going to add my final litre of apple juice. So while I was just pimping my social media earlier, you can also find Moss Home and Garden on Facebook, And if you want to follow me on Insta, I'm Stumoss, STUMOSS. That's a full demijohn. Could that be a problem? Okay, now if I put the yeast in at this point and leave it, I'm going to be looking at a purple eruption. Okay, this will definitely form a large krausen. There's so much fruit matter in there that will definitely go and out of the airlock and make a big mess. So I'm going to take some out for the original gravity, and then I'm going to take some more out. So I'm going to lose 100 ml to take the original gravity. You need to take the original gravity and the final gravity to work out the alcohol by volume. I'm explaining this to the people who've never done this before or have never seen one of my films before. So this is the hydrometer flask. This is the hydrometer. Let's find out what the original gravity is. And remember, I've not added any extra sugar. This is just blackcurrants and apple juice. And I'm starting on an original gravity of 1.044, 1044. Now, by taking this out, I have created a little bit of headspace, but this still isn't enough for the size of the krausen that will develop. I'm actually going to take out a further 750 ml and put it in this bottle. Then I'm going to put this in the fridge and leave it for a week before re-adding it back into this. Now, this bottle is sanitised. There should be no cross-contamination issue. And with me doing that, it means that it can build a nice, healthy, large krausen. It'll go through the crazy stage, which is between 3 and 5 days into fermentation. Then if I've waited a week, I should safely be able to add that back into it, and then it will carry on fermenting. Now, I've never done this before, but people on Facebook in the group Turbo Ciders for All have suggested this to me, and I'm going to heed their advice. Now, this is a sanitised tube, so I can empty what's in here into the bottle also and not be worrying about cross-contamination. So that's going in. And now I've simply got to gently get the rest of the 750 ml in there. That will do. So what I'm now left with is a nice amount of space in the top of the demijohn for the krausen. There is still a chance it could create a big enough krausen to still escape, but I'm hoping not. We'll see, and you'll find out later in the film. Now I'm going to put a bung in this to keep it airtight. I'm not going to cage it, I don't need to. There is no yeast in here, this is not going to explode out. This is now going to go into my fridge for a week, and then I'll bring it out a few hours before adding it back into there. So I'm not adding it in freezing cold, otherwise it would shock it. So at the minute I'm making cider. I've also got 2 wines to do, 1 red, 1 white, and I've also got cordial to finish off. Now I'm going to use 3 different yeasts for my 3 alcoholic drinks that I'm making. And I'm not going to use a cider yeast or a wine yeast today. I want this to retain a medium quality if possible. So I'm going to use some beer yeast. I'm going to use Crystalweissen yeast from Cross My Loof. This is actually becoming one of my favourite yeasts. And not for home brewing. It makes brilliant bread, and I've been baking it with it lately. Anyway, I'm going to add what would be the equivalent of a heaped teaspoonful of yeast into the demijohn. I'll do it through my dry funnel. I use a wet and a dry funnel so you don't get things stuck around the funnel. It just makes a lot of sense. So I'm doing it sort of visually, not with a teaspoon, but I kind of know what I'm looking at. So imagine a nice rounded teaspoonful of yeast having just gone in there. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm just going to take my demijohn now and I'm going to give it a little bit of agitation just so the yeast isn't left floating on top. And believe you me, that yeast is going to have a great time in here. Oh, it's going to love it. Okay, I'm going to label my demijohn, pop the airlock in, I'll be back. So I've got this one done, I've got the bendy airlock in, I've got my demijohn labelled, and it's just a case of waiting for fermentation to begin, but I need to get on with the wine now. Right, I need to pour my blackcurrant mixture for the red wine into this demijohn. And in it goes. So if you remember, this is blackcurrants with sugar and spring water. This is the must from that. It's very syrupy. And again, this is something that you don't want bursting out of the airlock because it'll go everywhere. And that's all in nicely. So I'm going to add a little bit of spring water. Wash the funnel out. And then as I add spring water, I'll just keep giving it a little bit of agitation. Because it's really got to definitely mix properly, this, for me to take an accurate gravity reading. So while it's all swirling around, I'll add some more. God, the blackcurrant smell is so strong. I hope this makes a really, really flavoursome and full-bodied wine. We'll find out in 3 months. So hydrometer tube and funnel, same as before. Moment of truth. Let's find out what the original gravity of this one is. So for the red wine, the original gravity is 1.074, 1074. So just as before, I'm now filling another 750ml bottle up with the must. That'll do. So just as before, bung into bottle. And now my dry ingredients again. So a heaped teaspoonful of pectolase, a heaped teaspoonful of yeast nutrient. So my red wine yeast is Young's all-purpose red wine yeast. I've used it once before, but I haven't tested the results yet because it's still conditioning. And I'm going to add half of this packet in there. That will do. So as before, a little swirl around so it doesn't all just float on top. Just going to rinse my demijohn. So label my demijohn like before. So black, 14th of July, 22, and an original gravity of 1.074. And this is my next airlock in place. Okay, I'm going to repeat the process now for the wine I'm making with white wine yeast. It's exactly the same apart from the adding of the yeast. I'll come back to you when I've done that one. Okay folks, I've now done the blackcurrant wine which I'm doing with white wine yeast. So here's that one as well. So that's all 3 of my alcoholic drinks now done. Now the only difference between the one I've done with the white wine yeast and the red wine yeast is the yeast. And for this, I'm using yeast of an unknown origin. I ordered some 71B from an eBay seller and I got sent something from China which is unrecognisable. Maybe it is 71B, I don't know. But that's what's gone into the white wine must. So here's what I've taken out of the demijohns which I'm going to re-add in a week's time. Cider must, red wine must, white wine must. I'm going to keep that in there and keep it cool. So that's the ciders and wines done for now. I'll come back to you with a fermentation update, hopefully later today when that begins. But I haven't finished yet because we now need to make that cordial. Let's make some homemade Ribena. Right, let's see how that cordial's doing. I think it's fair to say that the liquid has been extracted enough from that. I think we can put the solids to compost and now get on with the cordial recipe. So I'm going to pour what I've got in the demijohn into this saucepan. So this is going to be extremely sweet. I'm going to add a little bit of lime juice to counterbalance that. And then I'm going to do the same with some lemon juice. I'm then going to add 300 grams of caster sugar, just normal household caster sugar. And then I'm going to add another 200 ml of water. Okay, I'm going to put the heat on low. So that's turned right down, and I'm just going to give it a little stir around to make sure the sugar's not stuck to the bottom. I'm happy with that, and now I just need to let it come back to a simmer. Right, that's now simmering. I'm going to leave that for 2 minutes and then turn the heat off. So that is now done. I'm turning the heat off I'm going to put this on top to keep any contaminants out and leave it to cool for a little while. Okay, the cordial seems to have cooled down. I'm going to pour it into this bottle. It's very syrupy, which is what you want a cordial to be. Okay, I've got a tiny amount left. I'll just put that in a glass. There, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Okay, I'm going to keep that in my fridge to keep it cool. Okay, but I'm dying to try the cordial, so I've got a little bit left in the pan, so I'm just going to put some into this glass, just that much, and then dilute with just tap water, cold tap water. So that's what the diluted drink looks like. Cheers. That's unbelievable. It's absolutely beautiful. It literally is Ribena. If you gave me this blind, there's no way I would say it's anything but Ribena. It absolutely tastes like Ribena. It's amazing. Wow, that is gorgeous. So, if you're not into making alcohol, then you can make your own Ribena. Anyway, it's been 90 minutes since I put the wines and cider in the demijohns. Fermentation has already begun. Let's have a look. So first of all, we'll just look at airlock activity, and you'll note that there will be very slow bubbling happening on the right and very shortly followed by on the left. So they're the two wines at the back. The cider's in front. This is the one that's got the Hefeweizen yeast. It's got positive pressure in the airlock, so something is happening, but it hasn't started to bubble as much yet. I'll just take this towel down, and we can already see that using the red wine yeast and the white wine yeast, we've already got a healthy krausen formed, and that will rise as fermentation increases. So I'll give you another update in about 12 hours time. Catch you then. Okay, this is a 14-hour later update, and it's all happening. So in terms of speed of fermentation, the blackcurrant cider with the Hefeweizen yeast is by far the fastest fermenter at this point in time. Look at that, that's like an express train. So in second place is the blackcurrant wine with white wine yeast, and that's pretty damn fast. And in third place, the blackcurrant wine with red wine yeast is doing very well, but just not quite as fast as the other two. We'll have another update tomorrow or the day after. Well, it's the morning after, and I need to update you because the fermentation is very fast and furious, but we have had an eruption despite me removing 750ml out of there. The Crystalweizen yeast is obviously having a jolly good time, so I'm going to need to clean that out. So that's now cleaned and sorted. I am expecting it to flood through again because the krausen is just so high, but let's see what happens. Hey folks, it's 2 days later, which means it's fermentation day 3, and I've got something quite interesting to show you. Let's have a look. Okay. Now, first of all, don't worry about the sunshine. I've had these wrapped up with a towel. I've just unpegged the towel to show you this. But what I want to show you is, first of all, the red wine yeast has got a very healthy krausen on it still, and it's bubbling away very quickly. The white wine yeast, blackcurrant wine, has got a lesser of a krausen. If you compare the two krausens, that's probably about 3 centimetres deep. That one's maybe 1 centimetre deep. But that's also going, you know, like an express train. However, the interesting one is the one with the Crystalweizen yeast from Cross My Loof, the cider, which is finished fermenting on 3 days. Now, people bang on about Kvike Voss yeast and how amazing it is at smashing apart sugars and for fermenting, but honestly, Cross My Loof Crystalweizen yeast has amazed me. What a brilliant yeast it is. I mean, I cannot believe how fast this has fermented, and it was going like a rocket, if you remember. But it seems to have finished now. It's begun to clear naturally, and there is a sediment line which is very visible and clear at the bottom. So you can see how dark and how it's beginning to clear at the top, the distinct sediment layer at the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some of the cider must which I'd had in the fridge. Now this has been out of the fridge for 3 hours to bring it back to room temperature. I'm not going to throw it all in because if I do it risks erupting, but what I'm going to do is pour a little bit in now and keep adding a little bit and adding a little bit. Right, get this poured in. I just want to be nice and gentle, and the sugars that are in this should hopefully stimulate it to start fermenting again. You can really smell the blackcurrant. Okay, I'll leave it at that for now, and we'll have an update in a little while. Let's see what happens. Apologies, but this isn't a little while. This is about 20 seconds later, and I can already see a dancing happening on top. There's already action and activity from that going in there, which is pretty incredible. Okay, so this is a 4 hour later cider update, and as you can see, adding the extra cider must has recreated a krausen on here, and fermentation is happening in nice and steadily. I think I'm going to risk adding a little bit more. I'm just being nice and steady with this because I don't want it to erupt, and I'd like to get as much out of this as I can. I'll leave it at that now. Okay, blackcurrant cider update the next day. So the krausen is still there, but it has shrunk and fermentation has slowed right down again. So I think I'm going to risk adding the rest of the blackcurrant and apple mixture. Hopefully that's not pushed it over the edge. We'll find out. Let's have a blackcurrant update. So there's the bush. And these are the little twigs which I've had in water, which I've now planted. And these should all grow into blackcurrant bushes. And for those of you that are interested, this is the swimming costume that my wife dyed with the blackcurrants. It was green before, and the blackcurrants have made it go like a bronzy colour. So it's kind of worked, in a way. Okay, this is a day later. This is brew day 4, and I just want to show you now some of the differences that I'm seeing in these 3 brews. Now, first of all, I'm going to start with the cider because that's what we were most currently looking at. I'm just going to zoom in on that, and you'll notice from the airlock that fermentation has really slowed down again. I'm expecting this to completely stop fermenting in the next 3 or 4 days, and this will probably be fairly quick from going from demijohn to bottle. Next to that is the blackcurrant wine with the white wine yeast. Now you'll notice in the airlock there is plenty of activity. It's going very well. But I wanted to point out the colour. Now if you look at the cider and if you look at the wine, they're of a similar colour. Move on to the right, this is the blackcurrant wine with the red wine yeast. Now look at the difference in the colours. So the one on the right is extremely active now with the red wine yeast. It is the fastest of the 3 fermenters. You can see there is trub at the bottom and on top, lots of airlock activity and a thick krausen. So it's very interesting how the 3 different yeasts have worked so differently with what are essentially largely the same ingredients. Incidentally, the other demijohns that are in here are other ones which are conditioning, nothing to do with this brew. And I've moved all of my demijohns into my office because it's currently 40 degrees outside and my office is the coolest place in the house. It's 26 in here. Hey folks, it's now the 20th of July. This is brew day 6. And looking at this now, the blackcurrant cider has stopped fermenting again, and that's now done. I'm just leaving that to clear naturally. The blackcurrant wine with white wine yeast has barely bubbled over the last few seconds that I've been in here. I think that's just about stopped, so I'm going to top that one up today. And the one with the red wine yeast is still going strong. Now what's interesting, looking at the two wines, look at the trub at the bottom. The white wine yeast has got very fine trub. The red wine yeast is very big trub. Much bigger chunks and pieces. So that's interesting the way that the yeast acts. So I'm going to take the bung out of the white wine yeast blackcurrant wine. And here's my white wine must. I'm going to take the bung out of that. And I'm very slowly going to add some of this in and see if it will stimulate the fermentation. I've had this bottle out of the fridge for 3 hours. So it's pretty much at room temperature. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I won't add it all in. And then we'll come back and have a look at it in a couple of hours. Okay, it's a couple of hours later, and if you look at the middle airlock, you can see that the blackcurrant wine with the white wine yeast has started to ferment again. There is a tiny ring of a krausen around the edge, but I think I can risk putting a bit more in without it flooding out. In fact, sod it, let's go for it. Do or die. Right, that is now all in. Let's hope there's no eruption. So it's day 7 in the blackcurrant house. In terms of temperature, normal service has now resumed. The heat wave is over. The temperature is currently 15 degrees. And yeah, that's less than what it should be. So this yeast has gone through some extreme temperatures. Hopefully it's fared well. Let's just go across left to right. So the cider is not doing anything now, and you can see that the airlock has become inverted. That's because it was warmer than what it was. As it's cooled down, the pressure has reversed. That will have brought a bit of oxygen in there. Hopefully it's not spoiled the brew. Nothing I can do about that, but that has done, and I've got to leave that now to finish and clear itself naturally. The white wine yeast, which will end up being a rosé wine, is fermenting away now. This is the one I topped up, and this is doing quite nicely. So yeah, it hasn't come out of the top. The krausen has remained quite small, and I'm happy enough with that. The red wine yeast one is still fermenting away like an express train, or actually a northern pacer. Now, it's not doing too badly. It's better than a northern pacer. Transpennine Express, let's call it one of them. But yeah, it's no longer, you know, an Intercity 125, but it's doing quite well. I hope some of you people like my train analogies. If you don't get my train analogies, just think slow train, medium train, fast train. Right, I'm going to top the red wine one up a little bit. I'm not going to put it all in because I have a feeling it might react quite aggressively to the extra sugars. Okay, so here goes. I'll try and get half the bottle in and see what happens. Obviously this is a massive sugar boost. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So it's airlock back in, and already I can see excitement happening on top. Things are moving around. It's like, oh, what's this? It's nice. Yeah, that krausen's going to reform. Hopefully it won't erupt. We'll find out. I'll be back. It's brew day 8. There's been no eruption, so I'm going to add the rest of the blackcurrant red wine must. Okay, that is possibly tempting fate. Let's see. Good morning from the kitchen, folks. It's a blackcurrant cider and wine update, and I think it's going to be a racking day. Let's have a look at it. So first of all, here are the 3 brews on my windowsill. And no, they've not been fermenting on my windowsill. I'm going to go left to right. So the cider, still cloudy, quite a bit of trub in the bottom there. There's about 3 centimetres, 1 inch of trub down there, and I'm getting a bubble through the airlock about once a minute. So there is still something happening. The one which will be a rosé wine, which has got the white wine yeast, a similar story. It's still cloudy. There's a bit more trubby sediment in this one than there is in the cider. And I'm getting a bubble through the airlock about every 40 seconds with this one. The one with the red wine yeast, which is going to be a red wine, is super clear. It's absolutely beautifully cleared. And you can see that the way the yeast has reacted to what was there in terms of fruit matter, it's really clumped it. So they're bigger pieces of trub that are in the bottom, and there's a couple of floaty bits on top. But again, I'm getting a bubble through the airlock still about every 40 seconds. So there is something happening with these. So what I think I'm going to have to do today is rack these, because I don't want to leave them on the fruit matter sediment. If I do that, it could lead to off flavours. It's been on it far too long already. So I'm going to rack them into clean demijohns. And once racked into the clean demijohns, I'm going to have to top them up. And here is what I'm going to use. Now, I'm pretty gutted actually that I've got to resort to using actual proper Ribena, but I want to keep the blackcurrant flavour, and the Ribena cordial that I made has already gone. It was that delicious. So I'm going to make this bottle of spring water up to 2 litres by adding this, so it's going to be super concentrated still and strong, and some more brew sugar to make up to just over 2 litres of liquid. I firmly believe that there's still quite a bit of yeast active in those brews, and I think when I do this it will boost the fermentation, it will raise the ABV, and it will hopefully create more content in my demijohns. I could go straight for bottling at this stage and stop them, but A, I don't have anything to stop them with like Camden tablets, and B, I'm actually out of bottles. So I'm at a bit of a loss what to do, but I really want to get the cider and wine off of the sediment into fresh demijohns, and if I don't top them up, there's going to be too much headspace, and that could lead to oxidisation. So here's my spring water, and I'm going to add into this the Ribena cordial. Oh gosh, that opened with a pop. Brand new bottle. Like I said, I wish I could have used the own blackcurrant cordial that I'd made, but I didn't anticipate having to do this, and it's already gone. Now this has got preservatives in it, which are not good for fermentation, so I'm going to have to boil them off. So I'm just going to add this into the spring water, and you'll see that this is going to end up being 60% spring water and 40% cordial, so super strong, but hopefully that will help give it more of a blackcurrant flavour. Okay, that's enough. So this is now going into this saucepan, and I'm going to put the heat on, and I'm going to put this on very low, and I want this to come to a gentle simmer. So I'll be back with an update in about half an hour. Okay, 30 minutes is up, and this is the current situation. So I think we can say that hopefully the preservatives have now been nullified by that boiling. So I'm going to add to this 450 grams of brewing sugar, dextrose monohydrate. That dissolves very easily. And in fact, I can turn the heat off now, put the lid back on, and leave it. So it's 5 minutes later, the brew sugar has completely dissolved. I'm going to take the lid off the pan, and I'm going to put this mesh on to keep any contaminants out. I'm now going to leave this for about 3 or 4 hours because I want the pan of liquid to cool down to room temperature. Once it's cooled down, we'll get on with the racking and topping up. So I'll catch you this afternoon. Okay, it's a few hours later. It's time to proceed with the racking. So starting with the cider, bung comes out. I'm going to attempt to put my siphoning tube in above the sediment line. I'm using this clip which keeps it steady. It's very handy actually. I'll take it to there, but I won't take it any further. So that's where the bottom of the tube is. Sediment line is about 0.5 centimetre underneath it. So the first bit that's come out has gone into my hydrometer tube so I can measure the interim gravity, which is the gravity that it's currently at. So if I was bottling it, this would be the final gravity, but I'm not bottling it, I'm racking it. So this is the interim gravity. And just while that's going in, let's measure that now. So the interim gravity is 1.004. Not always the best idea to do this, but I don't want to waste any, so this is also going in. I have sanitised the equipment, so hopefully that won't be an issue. And there we go. So that is the cider now in there. So I'm going to pour a litre of the blackcurrant and sugar solution into this jug quite messily. Why are pans so bad when it comes to pouring? Come on brewers, recommend me a good pan that's not going to go everywhere when I tip it. So now I'm going to pour this, and I'm going to go right to the neck. I'll get a little bit of froth come up. Well, I want to let it froth out because I want it to come to about there. So now I know I've got this full enough for there not to be any airspace. So I'll look at the measuring jug now and I can see how much I've poured in. And as it happens, I've poured in exactly 600 ml, so I need to take note of that. I then need to put the airlock back in. Now the sugar booster, adding that cordial and sugar to it, has given this will restart fermentation. There'll be enough yeast left in suspension in the cider for that to happen. However, one thing that I've failed to do, forgotten to do, is to take the restarting gravity. So I've got the original gravity, I've got the interim gravity. Now I've added some more liquid to it, I need to take another gravity, which is the restarting gravity. So I'm just going to drop this straight into the demijohn. And my restarting gravity is 1.01010. So now I take this out, and now I re-put the bung back in, and I need to record that restarting gravity and the interim gravity. Okay, that's the cider done. I've got to do exactly the same process for both of the wines. You don't need to watch me do all that again twice. So I'll come back to you when I've done it all and we'll do some maths. Right, the bit that nobody likes, the maths. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through this in Microsoft PowerPoint with you and show you how I've worked this out. Right, let's do it. So I'm going to first of all work out the interim alcohol by volume for the cider. Okay, so the original gravity was 1.044 and the interim gravity is 1.004. Now, if I was bottling, that would be the final gravity, but I'm not bottling at this point. It's an interim gravity. So therefore, the interim alcohol by volume of this is worked out in the standard way: original gravity minus interim gravity times 1 through 1.25 equals a cider of 5.25%. That is what I had siphoned from one demijohn into another. However, I diluted that. So the diluted alcohol by volume for the cider is worked out as follows. So the capacity of the demijohn is 4.5 litres. It's actually 4.54 litres, but it wasn't full right to the top. So I'm just going to say 4.5 litres. I added 600 ml of cordial to the cider. So in order for me to do that and for the demijohn to be full at that point, that means there must have been 3.9 litres of siphoned cider, because if it's 4.5 capacity and I've added 600, then therefore there must have been 3.9. 4.5 minus 600 ml equals 3.9. Okay? Now, 600 ml is 15.38% of 3.9, and I've worked that out by basically saying 0.6 divided by 3.9 times 100. This is physical volume when I'm talking about percentage here, not alcohol by volume. However, if I have diluted the physical volume, then I've also diluted the alcohol by volume. So the interim alcohol by volume of 5.25% needs reducing by 15.38% to take account of this dilution. This is 0.8%, which I need to knock off. 15.38%, so this here, divided by 100 times 5.25 is 0.8. So therefore the restarting diluted ABV of the cider is 5.25%, which was the ABV, minus this figure of 0.8 equals 4.45%. I appreciate that the maths is not easy to follow, but I hope you have managed to follow that. You can always go back through it and watch it again just to get that equation right in your head and how it's all worked out. But this is now what I've got. This is the situation as it currently is. Okay, so my cider, which began on the 14th of July, was racked on the 3rd of August. It has a alcohol by volume now of 4.45%, taking into account the fact that I've diluted it by adding cordial. The restarting gravity is 1.010. So when this starts again now fermenting, I'm going to end up with a final gravity underneath, and that and the final gravity will work out another alcohol by volume. I'll add that alcohol by volume to the 4.45% to work out the final ABV at the end of the brew. This is probably the most complicated and head-mashing part of the whole brew process. So again, for the Rosé wine, it's exactly the same. I started off with an original gravity of 1.074. I've got an interim gravity of 0.994. And I work out the ABV by OG minus IG 1.074 minus 0.994 times 131.25, which meant that my Rosé wine was 10.5% before I diluted it. I diluted it in a demijohn with a 4.5 litre capacity, and I added 800ml or 0.8 litres of cordial, which means that there must have been 3.7 litres of siphoned wine. 4.5 minus 0.8 equals 3.7. 0.8 equals 21.62% of 3.7, and I've worked that out by saying 0.8 divided by 3.7 times 100. The interim ABV of 10.5 therefore needs reducing by 21.62% to take account of the dilution. So that means I've got to knock off 2.27%. So 21.62 divided by 100 times 10.5 gives me that figure 2.27. So the restarting diluted ABV is 10.5 minus 2.27, which means that my Rosé wine is restarting at 8.23%. And here it is. Finally, the red wine interim alcohol by volume. So I started off with an OG of 1.074. I had an interim gravity of 0.992. It's worked out in exactly the same way as the others, which gives me 10.76%. So the percentage of the wine that I siphoned was 10.76%. However, I diluted it by adding cordial. The demijohn capacity, as ever, is 4.5 litres, and I added 850ml of cordial to the red wine. Okay, that means there must have been 3.65 litres of siphoned wine. 4.5 minus 0.85 equals 3.65. So 0.85 is 23.28% of 3.65. I've worked that out by saying 0.85 divided by 3.65 times 100. The interim ABV of 10.76 therefore needs reducing by 23.28% to take account of the dilution. This figure is 2.5%. 23.28 divided by 100 times 10.76 gives me that figure of 2.5. So the restarting diluted ABV of the red wine is 10.76 minus 2.5 equals 8.26%. Thank you for sticking with me through that. I hope it wasn't too much of a head spinner. I'm now re-looking at my wines and cider, and I'm already having some regrets that I've done what I've just done. I wish I hadn't, because it was going to be natural from the blackcurrants from the bush, and I feel like I've cheated a bit by adding the Ribena and the extra sugar to it. And I hope I haven't spoiled the brews, but one thing that I might have done is shocked this into not actually fermenting anymore. I might have stalled the fermentation because I've probably upset the yeast which was in there. I won't know for a little while, so I'm going to come back to you in a bit. If I have shocked the yeast, if I'm not seeing any activity in the airlocks in the next few hours, then I'm going to add a tiny bit more yeast into each one. Catch you in a bit. Okay, it's been a few hours and I'm not satisfied that fermentation is going to happen again. It doesn't seem any better than what it was before, in all honesty. I'm seeing a bubble in the airlock. every minute, maybe less than that. I do have positive pressure, but I think this just needs a little reboot. So all I'm going to do is pitch a tiny bit more yeast, the same sort of yeast which was in each one before, into the demijohns. So a very small amount, less than half a teaspoon, but just a sort of little bit to acknowledge, you know, that hello, wake up, that's what I'm trying to get it to do. Okay, I've added a bit more yeast in there. I've got to do exactly the same now to the other two. Add some more yeast to them. You don't need to watch me do it 3 times. I'll come back to you later today, hopefully with some more positive news about positive pressure and bubbles in the airlocks. Catch you in a bit. Okay, this is a 4-day later update, and I've just put these on the window ledge for demonstration purposes. They haven't been stood here in the sunshine, but we can clearly see that this cider has picked up again, and in fact I'm going to need to remove that airlock and rinse it out because it's blew through a little bit. The Rosé wine, it's got a Krausen ring, but it's not doing an awful lot through the airlock. I'm probably getting 1 bubble every 50 seconds or thereabouts. The red wine, interestingly, that's got some bits and bobs in suspension in there. So I did get some trub come through with that, and indeed I did also with the Rosé. This isn't doing too much either, but I can definitely see the odd bubble coming up, and I'm probably getting a bubble through the airlock every minute. So I think it's just going to be a case of patience. I'm going to leave these, I'm going to put them somewhere warm, but not in sunshine, and we'll see what happens. So I'm reasonably hopeful that I haven't spoiled them by racking them and adding cordial, but only time will tell. We'll catch up in a bit. Hey from the kitchen folks, apologies for the background noise. I've had a really busy brewing and cooking day. The dishwasher's on. I've also got some cider must coming to a simmer. Lots happening. I want to give you an update on the blackcurrant cider because it's a bit odd really. This is brew day 39, so it's 39 days since I started the cider and it's 20 days since it was racked. It stopped fermenting. I mean, I'm getting 1 bubble in the airlock a minute, if that. So as far as I'm concerned, this is okay for bottling. It's not particularly clear. There's a very small amount of opaqueness to it. But what's odd is that there seems to be, from some angles, more sediment, as in this, than there was before I racked it. And I don't know if that's just something which is on the outside, on the inside of the demijohn, but not actually a layer of sediment or not. I'm a bit puzzled by it. So I'm going to re-rack this, but I'm going to do it roughly, not with the siphoning tube. I'm just going to pour it so I can have a better look. If I put this out of the light, so you can see the light shining on it rather than the light behind it, then you can get a better idea of what I mean. I think that this is stuck to the glass at the bottom. I don't think that that's a full-on layer, but I won't know until I have a look inside it. Okay, so to rack this, I'm simply going to pour it very gently through this coffee filter and funnel into a clean water bottle. I've literally just emptied this water bottle, so I don't need to worry about sanitising it. These have both been sanitised that are in the top. Smells good. And it looks nice and clear as I'm pouring it like that. The sedimenty layer does appear to be just around the edges and not the full depth that it looked like it was. So I'm hoping that this filter will capture any nastier bits. There isn't really nastier bits there, in all honesty. It doesn't look bad at all. I obviously don't want to bottle the sediment if I can help it. Sometimes it's unavoidable though. It's got a really nice blackcurrant smell. Okay, I'm going to leave that bottom bit because this bottom bit here is the bit which is quite trubby and sedimenty, so this I'm going to chuck away. In fact, actually, I'm going to put it in my air still because I've got some random bits of alcohol to run through there, so I'll add this to the mix. Why not? So that's what I've just re-racked again. I'm happy enough with that. I'm going to bottle that now. So my bottles, I've currently got some sanitising liquid in. I need to sort those out and I'll come back to you afterwards. Okay, I've got my bottles in the sink now. They're dried and drained, and I'm going to add some priming sugar into each one, just standard household caster sugar. that much, and the priming sugar will react with the cider. It will cause a very slight fractional fermentation, and that's what will give my cider a sparkle. Fingers crossed. Okay, before I start bottling, I'm just going to work out what the final gravity is for the cider. So I'm just going to very delicately pour some in here. Right, let's find out. Sank rather nicely. So the final gravity for this brew is 1.002. We'll do some maths after bottling. And I'm going to bottle the easy way today, which is through funnels. No siphoning today. Oh, it's much easier than messing around with the siphoning tube. Although possibly not as fun. I'm just going for 5 750ml bottles. I think I could potentially get a little bit more, but whatever's left, we'll call that a sampler. I'll come back to you when it's done. Right, so let's have a quick nifter, see what I reckon. Oh, really blackcurranty. Ooh, now. It's got a slightly tart edge. I think this is going to finish somewhere in the medium to medium dry category. I don't think it's going to be too dry. Cheers. So there's my bottles, and I've now got to bung them. These are in bungs in very hot water to sanitise them and make them malleable, and then I've got to add cages. I'll just demonstrate this on one of the bottles only. You don't need to watch me do it 5 times, that's boring. So 1 bung in the bottle, and then 1 cage pulled down over the bung. So when the pressure builds up from the secondary fermentation that will take place in that bottle from the cider meeting the priming sugar, then pressure builds up, the bung would fly off, the cage holds it in place. The bungs I just reuse and reuse, buy them from eBay or Amazon or wherever. Keep reusing them, and they're fantastic. And the cages, again, I tend to reuse them, but they're mostly donated from other places. I do buy them sometimes, but wife, friends, family, micropub, etc., they all give me cages. Anyway, I've got the rest of the bottles to do. I'll come back to you when I've done them all. So that's all my bottles bunged and caged. Now time to give them a quick shower to get the sticky residue from the outside. I need to add labels to my bottles, but before I can do that, we need to work out the final percent. It's time for that maths. So the restarting gravity for this brew was 1.01010. I deduct from that the final gravity of 1.002, which equals 0.008, and then I multiply this by 131.25, which equals 1.05. Now that's 1.05%, which is the amount of alcohol gained after racking. I need to add this to the alcohol by volume prior to me re-racking it, which was 4.45%. So add to this 4.45 equals a final ABV of 5.5%, and I'm happy with that. Okay, it's time to print the label out, and I've got a new toy, which is a Phonimo Bluetooth label printer, and I just do it from my phone now. Nice and straightforward, so I want 5 copies. There we go. Okay, here's my bottles. Here's my labels. They're a little bit small, but it doesn't matter. These are the size of the labels that came with the printer. I've actually ordered some larger ones to go in the printer, but I'll use the small ones first. So just stick these on. They're small, but they do the job just fine. From the living room, folks, this is where my blackcurrant cider is now going to condition for the next month. So it's on top of my drinks cabinet. It stays warm in this room. It's above 20 all the time in summer, and it will remain over 20 for the next few weeks, so I'm quite happy about that. So the cider is up here. It will stay on here for a month. The temperature will allow the yeast, which is left in suspension in there, to smash apart the bits of sugar that I put in for priming, and that will build up the pressure. So when the pressure builds up, that will create a sparkle and the flavour will also develop. So I'll be opening this in about a month's time, but we now need to have a look at the rosé wine and the red wine. Now, interestingly, the rosé wine and the red wine have got a fraction of more life in them than what the cider had. And I'm still getting the odd bubble in the airlock, probably about 2 a minute from each of them. So I don't feel quite like bottling them just yet. Plus, you can see on the rosé to the left, there is a distinct Krausen ring, which suggests that stuff is still happening within there. So it'll probably be about a week or two before I actually bottle the rosé wine. When I do that, I'm not going to film the whole process because you've just seen me do it for the cider, and it's going to be exactly the same. But I will update you when I have bottled it, and I will give you the ABV of what that is. The red wine is going to take the longest to bottle because that's not going into pressurised bottles, so I need to be very confident that fermentation has ended before I bottle that one. So I'll be getting back to you in a couple of weeks' time after I've bottled the rosé. Okay? Catch you then, folks. Hey folks, quick update from the busy kitchen. Yeah, it's all happening, as you can see. But I've just bottled the Blackcurrant Rosé wine, and the final gravity for this is 0.994. That means that the Blackcurrant Rosé wine has finished on a final ABV of 9.8%. So I'm happy enough with that. I would have liked it to have been over 10, but it's not far off. Anyway, there's a little bit left in the hydrometer tube, so let's have a little nifter. Extraordinarily flavoursome. Wow. The blackcurrant really comes through. It's got a tart edge. I think this is going to come out as a medium dry. It's somewhere in that ballpark now, but it's very complex because I'm getting some sweetness from the blackcurrant and I'm getting some tartness, which could be dryness as well. Let's see what happens in a month's time when I open it. I'm going to bottle my red wine now. I'll come back to you when I've done that because you don't need to see me bottling it all over again. You've seen me bottle the cider. It's all pretty similar. And we'll talk about ABVs for that afterwards. Catch you shortly. Okay, so the red is in whiskey bottles and vodka bottles, and I know someone's going to tell me that I've done this wrong because I should have used proper corks and not the original bottle corks, but you know what, I'm just going to take a chance on it. If it goes wrong and oxidises, then that's my fault. So I'm just going to take the final gravity for the red wine, and in fact the final gravity for the red wine is somewhat alarmingly 1.010. 1010. I do hope fermentation has finished, otherwise I could be looking at bottle bombs. With that said, because I'm using this kind of bottle with those sorts of bungs, if there is still fermentation taking place, and there shouldn't be because this is weeks later, but if that does happen, then the bung will just come out of the bottle. I'll keep these in a plastic storage container just for safety's sake. Anyway, let's have a little nifter. That's really nice. It's really full-bodied, actually. Definite red wine, yeah. But that blackcurrant flavour punches through it. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but I think it's going to be something full-bodied and hopefully fairly soft at the same time, not harsh. Let's see what happens. I'm thinking something with the body and the taste profile of a Merlot, but I don't want to jinx it. Anyway, in terms of ABV, the red wine comes out at a slightly disappointing 8.8%. I would have liked it to be higher, but the flavour is pretty damn decent, and the low ABV might mean that more of that flavour is coming through. So there are my blackcurrant red wines. These are going to stay in this plastic box just for safety reasons for at least the next month, possibly 6 weeks. I shall keep an eye on the bungs, whether they begin to raise or not. If they do, obviously, then I need to take action. But if they don't, then hopefully they'll be fine. They're next to some other red wines, which I've already got in here, which are soon to be opened. But I will be opening these ones, the blackcurrant ones, probably in a couple of months' time. So I've got the lid snapped on for safety reasons, and hopefully that'll all be fine. Okay folks, I'm in my living room now, and this is where my Rosé blackcurrant wine will condition. Here it is. It's on top of my drinks cabinet next to the previously bottled blackcurrant cider. It will definitely stay warm enough in here. South facing room, connected to conservatory. It's definitely going to stay above 20 degrees, and at night time it has the advantage of that light coming on, which warms the whole top of the cupboard. So the brewing process will allow the flavour to develop and for the wine to develop a sparkle, as the wine has got sugar in, just like the cider did, a spoonful of sugar to help those bubbles develop. It will take about a month or so, so we'll be doing an opening and tasting in round about a month's time. Hey folks, it's the next day, and guess what? Go on, have a guess. What happened? The red wine hasn't worked, went upstairs, this one had popped its cork completely out, therefore it could be oxidised. I'm not risking mixing it with the others. This is going to go through my air still with some miscellaneous bits of alcohol that I've got. As for the rest of the red wine, it's going into champagne style bottles. I'm adding priming sugar, bungs, cages, and I'm making sparkling red wine now, Volare style, like from the 1980s, and that's that. So I'm just giving you this as an update. You don't need to watch me put all this together because that's just boring. I'm explaining what I'm doing. So the next film that you see from me will probably be in about a month's time, and that's going to be a tasting. Okay? See you later, folks. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's 44 days since I bottled my blackcurrant cider. That makes this brew day 83, and now I'm opening it and I'm tasting it. So the bung has raised by about a millimetre or two, so hopefully that means I've got carbonation. I'm hoping for it to look nice in the glass. I'm hoping for a sparkle, but above all, I want it to taste nice. If it's clear, that's a bonus. If it's not, I won't worry about it. Right, so let's get the cage off. Let's see how this bung comes out. Let's resort to the sleeve. Yeah, we're in autumn now, so I'm fully dressed up. I've gone from summertime and vests to a big padded hoodie, because we can't afford to heat the house these days. Blimey. All right, well, it weren't a massive pop. It was subdued by the muffle of this, but there is some vapour and I can see some bubbles, so hopefully that means I'm going to have a sparkling cider. Here's my good and Carolus glass. Let's have a look. Oh, yes, what a beauty. Get in there. That looks nice, doesn't it? Smells tremendous, very cidery, definite smell of fruit as well. On the nose, I wouldn't have identified it as blackcurrant, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Let's see what it tastes like. Oh, wow. Absolutely, definitely 100% blackcurrant. But not in a sweet way. The flavour's there. It's gone somewhere in between dry and medium dry. In fact, I'm going to say it's a medium dry because it's not that dry. Yeah, that's a medium dry. And I'll tell you what, it's damn tasty. That's really, really nice. That'd be nice at any time of year, in all honesty. I like darker brews in autumn and winter, and so a dark cider like this would be just smashing. Now, it does look a bit like Strongbow dark fruits, but it's better because it's not Strongbow dark fruits. It's very nice. I'm really pleased with it. So big thumbs up from me. So the next film that you see in this series, in this film, will be when I open and taste the Rosé wine. So I'll catch you then. Good evening from the kitchen. kitchen, folks. It's 1 month since I bottled my Blackcurrant Rosé sparkling wine, hopefully sparkling wine. It's brew day 89 and tonight I'm opening and tasting. Now I'm looking at the bung and I can see on one side it's raised by, I would say, 1.5 millimetres, something like that. So fingers crossed I'm going to have a sparkle. It is 9.8% ABV, so there is a good chance that the yeast in there, you know, there wasn't an awful lot left to break the sugar apart that I put in for priming, but I won't know until I've had a look. So here we go. So just getting the cage off. So am I going to get a pop? That was absolutely pathetic. Oh dear. It doesn't seem to be very sparkling, does it? Let's have a look. I think what we could say is it's a big fat fail. Right, that ain't sparkling to me. Oh, actually I can hear a tiny amount of activity. Whoa! Whoa! Oh, bloody hell! Ah! Flipping heck! That's just literally just got my tongue and raked it. Jeez! It's got strong flavour, I'll tell you that. Very medium, full-bodied, medium dry, full-bodied, but with a really, really tart edge. I don't know if that's right, actually. I mean, it smells all right. It doesn't smell vinegary. It's just that tart edge. It really got me. Like that, straight down the tongue. I mean, the blackcurrant flavour is powerful. It really is there. And now I've had a second drink of it, I'm getting it now. It's not, I'm not getting the shock anymore. It was a bit of a shock to the system, to be quite honest, that. It's got a very delicate and mild effervescence. This is another one of those ones, like I did mandarin orange and cranberry, and that one, it took a long time to get a good sparkle out of it. I think I need to leave this for another month. So it will be another month update on this one. And also I've done the red wine as well. I might as well, that's due for opening tomorrow, but I'm going to leave that another month too. Which means you might not see a brew film for a while. But I'd rather it be the right product. I'll keep this film in there just so you can see the progress of it, and that after 1 month I didn't have a sparkle, and then we'll compare it after 2 months. Okay, so cheers, and now I've got used to that flavour, I can drink it, it's fine. But gosh, that was a bit of a shock. But yeah, blackcurrant flavour's massive. Okay folks, I'll catch you on the next film. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. Once again, tonight it's the grand opening night for my blackcurrant red wine. So, story so far. This has been in the bottle conditioning for 2 months. This is brew day 123. It's literally been a third of a year since I started the whole blackcurrant process. So this is going to be quite a long film, I think, putting the cordial, the cider, the rosé and the red into one film. I'm going to open the rosé up in a few days' time, but this one's all about the red. Now, I've got it at room temperature because it's red, but I'm also going for the sparkle, Volare style, 1980s. I can see that the bung has raised by a very, very fractional amount. I mean, we are talking about 1.5 millimetres or somewhere round about that. I don't know if it will have a sparkle. I suspect that it probably won't, but let's see. I don't mind if it does, and I don't mind if it doesn't. I'm quite comfortable either way with it. With it being red and at room temperature, I won't be precious about it. So the cage has broken, so I'll just get that off. Right, am I going to get a pop? No, there was a little bit of a pop there, wasn't there? It wasn't amazing. 2 months conditioning, see what it looks like. Okay, so I don't think we can call that sparkling. Let's be brutally honest. Ooh, now that's interesting, isn't it? I can hear a very, very slight fizz. And I do wonder, if I left this for a year, would that turn into a full-on fizz fest? I don't know. But anyway, look at the colour. It's really, literally Ribena in a glass. It looks brilliant. I love it. Absolutely love it. It's so clear as well. I don't know if you can see my fingers through that, but I can certainly see through it when I look at it. Ooh, ooh, potent smell. A much more alcohol-y smell than I expected. Almost slightly like a grappa edge to it. Quite a, you know, stronger smell than what the percentage actually represents. The percentage is only 8.8, so this is not really a strong wine. It's only just a wine, really. Anyway, cheers, folks. Let's see how it tastes. Wow. So first of all, it is mildly effervescent, but that's it. But wow, it's beautiful. Wow, the blackcurrant flavour is just incredible. I'm not going to say wow again, but I just want to. You know what I mean? It's lovely. Really, really, really fruity. Really full-bodied, which is nice because it's red and that's what you want with a red wine. Just really pleasant to drink, actually. It doesn't taste overly strong. The smell's there, the strong smell's there, but it doesn't taste overly strong. It's got quite a very nice flavour, very drinkable flavour. If you'd have asked me to guess the ABV, I wouldn't have said 8%, I'd have probably said 5 or 6%. It's one of those misleading ones. They're the dangerous ones. Scary. Anyway, where are we on the scale? It's very medium. Maybe a fraction on the dry side of medium, but it's certainly more medium than a medium dry. It's really pleasant, very drinkable, and I am going to make this again next year for definite. I'll have more than one blackcurrant bush as well. So yeah, no, I'm really happy with this. So in a couple of days' time, well, maybe 3 or 4 days' time, I'm going to open the Rosé. Let's see if that one's developed a sparkle. And then that will be this film over. So cheers, folks. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll catch you on the next bit of film. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. This is brew day 125, and if you've got this far, all I can say is thank you very much for sticking with me. I salute you. I really appreciate your support, so thanks very much. Have you subscribed to my YouTube channel? Please do so if you haven't. Anyway, tonight is the Blackcurrant Rosé wine grand opening night for the second time, and we're going to see now if it has a sparkle. So this has been conditioning now for a good couple of months, and if it hasn't got a sparkle now, I don't think it's going to have one at all. Now I'm looking at the bung, and you may be able to tell that it's slightly raised. So hopefully that means there will be some fizz, but I don't know. So as per usual, I want it to look good, smell good, and taste good. And I want some bubbles. It's a lot to ask. Let's just see what happens. Okay. Right. Am I going to get a pop? No. Oh, the anticipation was there, wasn't it? Okay, well, now we know that the yeast is dead. It ain't sparkling, right? So, why the bung had raised slightly, I have no idea. But yeah, we can definitely say it's not a sparkling rosé. It's just a nice, deep purple Rosé blackcurrant wine. Smells powerful and blackcurranty, just like before. It does taste pretty banging. It's drier than the red. And there is a tiny, tiny tickle on the tongue of mild effervescence. Not fizz, not sparkle, mild effervescent. Fairy's feet on the tongue. But I'll tell you what, it's a lovely drop. So thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for watching this massive film. This is the longest one I've done so far. And thanks for your support in general. So cheers, folks. And I'll catch you on the next brew, cooking film, or whatever that may be. The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.